there is another deception we need to let go of. And that is the deception that when people are being scammed, that they are not in on the scam. Now, there are times when people are taken advantage of, they're not aware they're being taken advantage of. They're really not aware of it and they really think they're doing the right thing even though they're being hoaxed. That happens. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But when it comes to mass deception, the masses are in on it. Because here's the thing, to scam one individual takes a lot of effort. It's easier to scam a whole group. But to keep the scam going, you need to maintain the scam. You need to maintain the false reports. You need to maintain the lies. You need to maintain and sustain the false evidence. And that takes a lot of effort. And no human being, no matter how professional they are, no matter how excellent they are as an actor, can maintain this over a long period of time. It's quite exhausting. So that's why when it comes to mass deception, the scam artists use black magic. They trick the masses into an agreement with them, and later they can use this agreement to blackmail the masses. That is the basis of all mass deception, blackmail. You trick the masses into agreeing with you on something, and this agreement you can use against them. Let me give you an example. Let's say now that you have this group that wants to have their sexual lifestyles being normalized amongst the youth. So they know that to normalize a certain sexual lifestyle, you have to go to schools because that's where the youth is. The youth that go to people that go to school, in whether it's primary school, secondary school, which some colors called high school, they are in their formative years. So if you want a behavior to be normalized in society, you have to go to the schools. If you go to college, where people are already in their 20s, you're not going to achieve it that quickly because people that are in their 20s already have a basic idea of who they are. So you want your alternative lifestyles to be accepted by the children and the teenagers. But you know very well that if you out of the blue would come and say that you want your alternative sexual lifestyles to be normalized, parents are going to say no. And the school's going to say, are you out of your mind? This is not a brothel where you just come and do whatever you want to do. So what do you do then? Or what did the rainbow community do? They sent their agents to the schools to inform the schools that there are some people with alternative sexual desires. And they asked the school, do you guys discriminate against people based upon their sexual desires? And the school would say, no, we don't discriminate at all. We don't discriminate based on skin color, nor on someone's ethnic background, nor on someone's mental abilities or whatever. We are here, we are a public school, we're here for everyone. Now the agents of the rainbow community trick the school to sign a document that they don't discriminate against people. Nothing written there about sexual orientation or about any sexual lifestyles, just that they don't discriminate. Now, later, they want to come with their propaganda. But now the school would say, hold on a minute. We're not into that. But then it would say, but you agree that you guys don't discriminate, right? So why now that we come and talk about alternative sexual lifestyles, you don't want it to be discussed? Aren't you a school for everyone? Aren't you a public school? Didn't you agree that you don't discriminate? You see now? And that's how that rainbow community managed to push their agenda on the public schools. And that's how they recruited many young people for their movement. And now the appears as if this movement is the norm, while it actually isn't. That's how they did it. And there were even people that used to be part of this rainbow community, that used to be the agents doing this, that came out and confessed about it. There's this black woman who's now a believer. We used to do this also. You can check her testimony online. But, okay. I'll look up what her name is. But Anyway, such things happened. So you get the people into an agreement. An agreement is not a bad agreement, just an agreement. For example, we don't discriminate, or we don't look down on other people, or we're good citizens, or we don't do such stuff because we know better. So you come with an agreement that boosts someone's self-esteem. And once people agree with that, we agree with whatever it is that you guys agree upon, now you relax, and later when you come with your agenda, you'll keep reminding them about what they've agreed to. So because you keep reminding them of what they've agreed to, they're less likely to resist. Even if they're opposed to the agenda that you're coming with, because there is an investment on their part, they don't want to resist their own investment, because if they go against their own investment, they will be contradicting themselves. And then you need to explain why they're contradicting themselves. And then you need to admit that they've been scammed or they've been conned. It's very painful. People don't want to go there. People have this pride of wanting to protect their feelings and to protect their mental sanity. Because once you admit that you're contradicting yourself, mentally you need to process this. And this can be challenging. So people want to protect their mental and emotional stability, so they don't want to admit they've been scammed. They don't want to admit that they've been tricked. So once they have an investment in something, they want to continue with their investment, even if they are opposed completely against the agenda they've invested in. That's human psychology. Now, any type of mass deception out there, I am telling you plainly, the masses are in on it together. The reason they're in on it is because if they have to completely forfeit the agenda that's playing out, they would also have to forfeit their own allegiance to their values. Because it's very simple. When you invest in something, it becomes valuable to you. Whether it's an investment for something or investment against, it's still an investment into something. The investment into can be for or against something. You can be against abortion, or you can be for, smoking in public areas. I'm just naming something. Whether you invest for something or against something, it's still an investment. So, and because that investment, it becomes valuable to you. So if you invested long term in something, it doesn't matter whether your investment has come from a good heart. If your investment comes from a good heart and your intentions are pure and good, that doesn't matter. It's still valuable to you. And people can even use your good investments against you. Okay? Let's say now that you value the lives of children, and you say children need to be protected. That's an agreement that's honorable. So a scam artist may come to you and say, hey, children are being mistreated here and there, but sometimes children deserve it, because then you tell them, no. Adults who are out of their mind should be dealt with in a strict way, in a very harsh way, if necessary. Children don't come with that BS. So they trigger your indignation against violence against children. And then the individual tells you, you're right. You know what, children need to be protected. And now you're relieved because the individual agrees that children need to be protected. That's an agreement. Then the individual tells you about this project called Save the Children, or some institution that's there to help children. And then you think, okay, I can donate 10 euros a month to that. I want children to be protected. What you're not aware of is that organization is a front. They're not really interested in the safety of children. They pretend as if they are to get your money, and they use the money to cover up for their criminal income. But here's the thing. You value the lives of children. And based on the value you have for the lives of children, you agreed to donating 10 euros a month. Your motives are pure. Therefore, your action is also pure. But the thing is, what you are donating to is not pure nor good. You've been tricked into sponsoring an evil enterprise. Now, the moment you realize it's an evil enterprise, what do? You just stop donating and you can sue them. Very simple. When it comes to monetary investments, That's how it goes, especially if it's about small amounts. But what if it's a more complicated matter? What if you just want to be left alone? Okay? And because you want to be left alone, you agreed to things as the world owes you nothing. You love to use this phrase against people that you think feel entitled. When you want to be left alone, just tell people the world doesn't owe you anything. Okay, one day you're in a financial distress and you expect your relatives at least to support you, but they tell you the world doesn't owe you anything. And now you're upset because they neglect you that way. But hold on a minute. Isn't that what you are saying to other people all the time? The world doesn't owe you anything when you want to be built out from being responsible towards them. Now it's being used against you, and now you're upset. So now, even though you know that the narcissistic attitude of your relatives is wrong, because anytime your relatives needed help, you were there to help them, but now it's their turn to just assist you, they don't want to do it, even though you know it's wrong, you don't argue with them. Why? Because you have an investment in the exploitation, namely that the world doesn't owe you anything. You've agreed that the world doesn't owe you anything, so you also therefore agreed with them neglecting you. If you go against them, then you have to admit that you agreed to also neglect other people. And now you feel uncomfortable admitting this, so you remain silent. That's what I mean. Too often, people agree with things without checking the context of what they're agreeing to. That's why even in law, they would tell you, before you sign a contract, read it well. Check the context. Because if there's one clause or one article in that contract that gives the other party an undue leverage over you, even a big courthouse will tell you that contract is null and void. If it's written in a contract, for example, that the employer can decide to withhold payment from you if he doesn't feel well, if he feels like it, then when this contract goes to a courthouse, the judge will say this is null and void. Because you can't expect people to work for you and you don't pay them based on how you feel. Okay? So when this contract goes before a court of law, they would say null and void. And the man who offered the contract can even get a fine or go to prison for tricking people and exploiting people that way. But here's the thing. The scam artist knows that if this contract goes for a court of law, that he will lose. But if you sign it and agree to it, to you it's valuable. Because you will always remember, I agree to this. So when he decides, you know what, Kevin, I'm not going to pay you because I don't feel like you did much for the company this month. You read the contract and he tells you, you signed here the contract and read the contract. When you read the contract, you think, oh crap. Even though you know it's wrong, you still need to admit, okay, why did I agree to this? Why didn't I read the contract earlier? You feel dumb. You begin to blame yourself. And this is what the scam artist relies on, your self-blame. Because as long as you're blaming yourself, you won't blame them for setting the situation up to begin with. They set up the scam and the situation, you just fell for it. But you wouldn't have fallen for it if the situation wasn't there. So yes, you take responsibility for falling for it, but still you could only fall for it because it was presented to you. So by you remaining stuck in self-blame, they go off the hook. They don't have a chance to escape. So that's why I'm telling you, when it comes to mass deception, don't see the masses as just the victims. They have an investment in what goes on. That's why when scandals come out and you later find out that, hold on a minute, this hoax is way too obvious. How come nobody openly talked about this or resisted it? Now you know why. There was an investment on their part in it. And that's why. Whatever goes on in a community or whatever goes on in society, check people's response to it. If people's response is a response of reluctance to admit that something is off, they know that there's an investment somewhere that they're protecting. If something is so obvious that it's dangerous or harmful, and people don't want to admit this because there is an interest in protecting. And then you check, oh, okay, but what's the interest then? That's the next step. Just realize mass adoption cannot happen without the investment of the masses. So what is the investment of the masses? Check it out.